So today we're going to be talking about reading and what else, because there's more to it than just teaching reading. So what I wanted to start with, and this is kind of like my overall, this is what my main point is. Teaching reading is teaching language. So let me give you just a brief background where I'm coming from. My training was actually as a speech and language therapist. When I was in second grade, I wanted to be a teacher. It's interesting how Lord puts desires in our hearts, because the first job I got, full-time job, was, guess what? As a teacher. I had a special ed class of kids with severe speech and language problems. So when I knew I was going to take that position, I signed up immediately for a grad level course called Teaching Reading. I learned 3 basic things in that class. I learned group management in the classroom. I learned reading theory, nothing practical. I would not have been able to sit down with a child and teach them how to read. And I learned that once decoding has happened, which I had not been taught how to do, but once it has happened, basically teaching reading is teaching language. I was a language therapist. I'm going, great, I've got this covered, until I had my first classroom and I had to teach them how to read. Didn't know how to do that. So teaching reading is teaching language. So let's talk about what is language? What am I talking about? So we're all on the same place. Language is basically it's made up of socially shared rules that include the following. What words mean. For example, the word star can refer to a bright object in the night sky. It can also refer to a celebrity. That's what a word means. It also refers to how to make new words. So we have the word friendly or friend, and from the word friend we can make friendly, unfriendly. What are some other words that we can make from friend? Friendship. How about friendliness? Friendliness, that was one I was thinking. Any others that you can think of? Befriend, to befriend someone, that makes it a verb. Okay, so how to make new words. Language also involves how to put words together. So listen to the difference. Peg walked to the new store rather than Peg walk store new. What's the problem with the second example I gave you? The words are out of order. The sentence is not complete, right? Okay, so that's the talking about how we put words together. We're also talking about what combinations of words are best in different situations. So listen to the difference. Would you mind moving your foot? Can quickly become, please get off my foot, if the first request is not answered promptly. All right, language is also expressive and receptive. What do I mean by that? Right now, I am using expressive language. I am communicating my ideas, my concepts to you. You are using receptive language. You are hearing what I'm saying and you're trying to make sense out of it. All right? You're trying to put it together with what you already know and put it to, connect ideas and learn something. So we're both using receptive and expressive language. Language is also oral, which is what I'm using right now, but you're making use of my written language. Oral language, talking to one another. Written, that's using this code that we have up here. So a written language is basically using some kind of a code. It's using some kind of a writing method. So in English, we have these letters. We don't use characters. Like, for example, in Chinese, they don't have an alphabetic system. It's more of a character system, where a character, which can actually be built on one another, represents an idea. In English, it's an alphabetic system, where the letters of the alphabet represent the sounds of our language. And that code is based on some kind of a writing system. So our job is to teach the child how to use his language effectively. We have to teach both expressive and receptive language, and we have to teach in both oral and written forms. So as I talk in this session about teaching reading, I'm going to be answering 3 basic questions. First one is, What is reading? Well, I can answer that very quickly for you. It's the ability and knowledge of a language that allows comprehension by grasping the meaning of the printed letters, the words, and the sentences that are in the code. So let me say that again. It's the ability and the knowledge of a language where you can grasp the meaning from a written code. That's reading. Another question we're going to be looking at is, well, how do we teach reading? Sometimes in this process that we call teaching reading, we're going to, somehow in this process, we're going to move the child from knowing and recognizing the printed letters to understanding the meaning behind those printed letters. We're also going to be looking at how do the other areas of language arts reinforce teaching reading. So as I walk you through this, I'm going to be giving you 10 tips to teaching reading, pointing out where the other areas of language arts play a role. Now, traditional methods, I'll just call them traditional methods, will generally separate each of these into different subjects. The student will have a reading book, they'll have a grammar book, they'll have a spelling book, they'll have a writing book, they'll have. And each one of those is a little box on your to-do list for the day. Each one of those is something that you have to come up with a grade report for your PSP, right? Each one of those is time taken during the day, money that you're spending at the curriculum hall for this book and this grade level and then that grade level. Tip number 1, integrate your subjects. We want to maximize our efforts. We want to reinforce learning, and we want to strengthen brain training that has to happen in order for reading to occur. We are training the brain. So we want to work in a way that the brain gets trained so the child can go from understanding letters, do they understand the letters, to taking meaning out of the printed word. All right, we're going to go through some of the stages of teaching reading. The first one would be the pre-reading stage. Tip number 2, this is for the pre-reading stage. You want to read aloud to your children. So why would we want to read aloud? We all know we need to do it. At least I hope you know that you need to be doing that. But why? Why is that so important? Well, it plants the desire for reading. It inspires future reading. It stimulates the intellect and the attention span. Children who are read to consistently over time develop attention span in ways that children who are not read to don't. My children, when they were young, could listen to chapter books and ask, read the next one. And they were thoroughly involved. I'll never forget the year we had some friends of mine, their daughter and son were 13 and 14. They came to stay with us for an evening. And we picked up our family read aloud for the evening. I filled them in a little bit on what the story was about so they could step in where we were. And after about 5 minutes, the 13 and 14-year-old asked if we were done and when we were turning on the TV. My kids could have listened all evening, depending on the book and how interested they were, but pretty much all evening. The problem when I was reading aloud to my children is we wouldn't stop and get back to everything else we had to do for the day. So what was the difference? My children had been read to on a regular basis, starting as infants, and exposing them to that opportunity so that by the time they were 8, 9, 12 years of age, they had sustaining attention spans. Why else read aloud? It also nourishes emotional development. Some of our favorite memories are cuddling up on the sofa with our children over books. It introduces the textures and the nuances of the language. I am teaching oral language when I am reading to them. It teaches the reading process. They learn that those funny-looking characters on the page are the story that I'm reading. Reading aloud is, in essence, an advertisement for learning to read. In fact, predominantly, the research proves that children who are good readers were read to as children. Children also need to have what's called phonemic awareness. So tip number 3, we're going to talk about phonemic awareness. This is the understanding that words are made up of a sequence of sounds. It is the ability to hear a word that's been segmented into its sounds and then to be able to glue it back together. So let me give you an example. T-r-e. What word was that? You have phonemic awareness. This is fantastic. D-a-o. T-e-ch-er. Great. Okay, now, how about this? We're going to now unglue a word. I'm going to give you the whole word, and I want you to pull it apart. Ball. I'll do it with you. B-a-o. How about truck? T-r-a-k. Okay, that's phonemic awareness. Now, the development of phonemic awareness it occurs differently for different children. It is a developmental skill. So if you were to ask a 3-year-old, can you give me the sounds in cat? Very likely a 3-year-old would give you a response like, meow. Because to a 3-year-old, the word cat is representative of that creature that he likes to torment or whatever, okay? The child does not understand that that's a linguistic tool that we can use and take away from the meaning that it's related to and play with. A 5-year-old that has developed phonemic awareness could possibly give you k-at, because a 5-year-old has learned that linguistic ability to take a word out of context and play with the parts of words. So it's a developmental skill. So tip number 3 is to make sure that phonemic awareness is in place before starting any kind of formal reading instruction. In fact, phonemic awareness is an indicator of future reading success. The research shows that children who do not have this are going to struggle. In fact, if you are working with an older child that has problems with decoding, it could very well be that the child never developed phonemic awareness, and you would need to go back to that level and work on it. I'll never forget, a mom on our Yahoo group was talking about her 9-year-old who was struggling with learning to read. And he came down one day and he said, fire truck, fire. That starts with f, right? 9. Is it any wonder that he was struggling with learning how to read? He had not connected the sounds of his language with what he was trying to learn in the reading experience. So in review, we need to have, for pre-reading, reading aloud, oral language development, and phonemic awareness. That helps us put together the preparation for reading.